Americans are struggling financially. Brits are struggling financially. Let's see what people have to say about this on TikTok.
Guys, I don't know how the average American is making it right now because from the looks of it, things are just going to hell. For example, if you want to rent an apartment, the landlord wants proof of income 3 times the rent. And out here in northern New Jersey, that means a 1 bedroom, you got to be making 30 to 50% more than the national average. The groceries have gone up like crazy. It's like, it seems like it keeps creeping up ever so slightly, but after 3-4 months, you feel like it's a, you feel the increase. Because last year, I would be shopping for myself alone twice a week and it would run me about $80 each trip. Now it's costing me like 125 to 140 per trip.
That sounds about right. I've been saying on this channel constantly that it's a global phenomenon, this increase in groceries, and I find it insane how groceries have basically doubled, because there is no one whose wage has doubled if you're an employee. That it doesn't exist. If you're on 20K when COVID started, your employer in the same job has not doubled your income to 40K. That's not what has happened. So everyone is worse off, is my point. If your wages aren't being doubled, but your expenses are being doubled on all ends, from rent to groceries to electricity to gas, you're just worse off. That's just all it is. You're just worse off.
And when I include going out maybe once or twice a week to eat, my total for food is coming out to be crazy. It's over $1,000. And I know it wasn't like that growing up. It's gotten out of hand. But people are walking around like nothing's wrong. Everything is fine. Everything is dandy. But it won't be long before people are going to have to decide whether to pay the rent, pay the mortgage, or feed their families.
I think we've already gotten to that point where people are having to decide between paying a mortgage or feed. I think we've already gotten there. I've seen many cases online of these things happening. And I have that same sentiment because I don't make like bucket loads of money, right? You can call it 2 jobs, I guess. I have a day job. I'm a fashion journalist. And then I also have 2 YouTube channels, this YouTube channel and a fashion YouTube channel that I run. And then, of course, I post videos on TikTok and Instagram. So I'm doing a lot of things all at once. And I still don't make 6 figures, but I make a good enough wage for a 27-year-old man living alone with no responsibilities. I don't have a kid. I'm not married, whatever. So I can live comfortably. But I think, because I'm just about living comfortably, so I always think, how do people that make less than me who have kids, how do they survive? And that's why, I've given friends money to just buy groceries because I understand. Like I see the prices go up. No one's wage is doubling. I fully understand. I've financially supported a few of my friends just because I want to, not because they asked me to or whatever, because it's hard out here. And if I can help, why not? Because you don't have to be a trizillionaire before you decide that, you can actually help people, right? It's just insane. Sometimes I sit down and I really wonder, and I have this conversation with my mum all the time. How are people surviving? Like, how do families that the same wage as me, but they have to, it's 2 kids and 2 adults living on the same wage. I don't understand that, which in the UK is a big reality. Because if you look at the average wages in the UK, the average wage in the UK is £37,430. So what I earn is about double that. So basically, I'm earning 2 average wages in the UK at once. So my wage is a very average wage if like a family is living on it, because average wage, 2 different adults, dual income, and let's say they have 2 kids. I'm like, how do 4 people survive on that wage? With the grocery prices, the gas and electricity bill. And like, how do you survive that and live any type of good life? Because once you start adding, okay, we're going to go out once a week. Now it's like you're literally broke. Like you have no money, no savings, nothing. It's so hard to survive these days. I really hope it gets better. And I always wonder, what is the solution? But I really, really hope it gets better.
And of course, people are going to choose to feed their families. And so who knows what's going to happen? But I was at the mall the other day and it was pretty packed. But there wasn't really that many people holding bags. It was just people hanging around window shopping, which doesn't mean squat. It just means people want to get out of their houses and hang around, maybe eat at the food court. And that the food court was popping, of course. But we're going to have to wait and see. I foresee a lot more shoplifting. a lot of stores going out of business because of that, and there's going to be a lot of break-ins.
I mean, we're seeing that. We're seeing stores closing down because they can't afford to be open. We're seeing that. We're seeing crime rates skyrocket. And it's like a lot of people think that people commit crimes because they're evil. And I think sometimes maybe it depends on where you grew up. You need to see people's situation to realize what circumstance they're in to commit crime. Of course, some people are just inherently bad. But a lot of times people commit crime out of necessity. They don't have a choice. Like if you are homeless, you can't afford to pay rent, you can't afford to buy groceries, especially if you've been working full time most of your life. There's going to be a level of resentment that you feel towards society and towards people, especially when you see people that make a lot of money, right? When you see someone rich, someone coming out of a Ferrari, you're not envious because you inherently hate that person. You're envious because you're like, I work so hard and, you know, I can't survive. And there are people who have so much wealth that they can buy things that are not necessary for the price of a house. So I personally don't feel that way, but it could be obviously because I'm comfortable and all those things. But I'm not surprised when someone who has worked their whole life, has gone to school, has a degree, you know, struggled their whole life, ends up resorting to having to shoplift groceries to have food to eat. That's just what happens. Normally, places where crime is high, it normally has to do with there being like a massive wealth disparity and people struggling. You don't see loads of crime where people aren't struggling. You don't see, you know, high crime in, you know, countries where people have food to eat. And you look at the Scandinavian countries. The crime rate in a lot of Scandinavian countries is so much lower than other regions in the world where things are really tough. There's a crazy poverty disparity. I mean, the crime rate in my home country of Nigeria is sky high. Well, it doesn't surprise me. People are struggling. People are living in insane levels of poverty that I feel like people in the West could not even imagine. So when those people kidnap people for ransom, as much as it's horrible, you don't want family members to die. It's not, that person's going to be traumatized for the rest of their life. But if you're being logical, you can understand why it happens.
A lot of cars being stolen, a lot of parts being stolen, wheels, catalytic converters, which is already happening, but it's gonna, like, you know, more and more people are gonna wanna do it because they have no other way. More and more people are gonna turn to scamming and stealing and all that stuff because things have gotten so expensive. So we'll see. What's the solution?
That's my question. That's all I want to know. What is the solution? Like, how do we stop this from getting worse and worse and worse and exponentially getting worse to the point where there's literally war? Because I feel like if I can compare this to anything, historically, think of the French Revolution, right? Where the average worker who works really hard was struggling to make ends meet. And then you had, you know, the elites in France wasting money and just being wasteful. And people built a level of resentment to the point where they overthrew the monarchy and the elites. They were killing elites out of frustration. That's what happens in society when it gets that bad. And obviously, I don't want to live in a time of where everyone's killing each other because of these issues. So I really want to know, what is the solution?
Solution is for the banks and the Federal Reserve to forgive all debt. That's the only way. There's no other solution. Even if we took 20 nations to war and gave them money to buy from us, it still wouldn't help the situation.
The problem is, that's not a solution though. That doesn't even make any economic sense. Banks can't afford to pardon debt because money has to come from somewhere. So if they pardon debt, then where is that deficit being met? Are they going to have to borrow money to make up for the deficit? It doesn't make economic sense for the banks to just like pardon every single, that doesn't make any sense. But it would be nice in theory, but it doesn't make economic sense. But yeah, we're going to end it there. People are really struggling, and I really, really hope that this doesn't continue to the point where things get really dire. Like I've said, we don't want a French Revolution happening, because if that happens, we might lose family members, you know, you might lose friends in the process, and we don't want to see that. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll be back with another video tomorrow.